This is our session on the future of higher education. And I just want to start by thanking our sponsors. So Kirkwood Community College is sponsoring the education track of our Iowa Ideas Conference. And I think we have a little video we're going to play here in a second from our sponsor.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 Iowa Ideas Conference. I'm Lori Sundberg. I'm the president of Kirkwood Community College, and we are proud to be a sponsor of this year's conference. The Iowa Ideas Conference brings educational sessions on a variety of topics to Iowans from all over the state. It is a terrific conference, and we are proud to be a part of it. So on behalf of the 2021 Iowa Ideas Conference, welcome, and I hope you enjoy your time at the conference. Thank you.
Great. Well, so yeah, I think just to start off here, I'm going to introduce our panelists and then give each of them a few minutes just to share a little bit about their background and yeah, how they got there. So first, we have University of Iowa President Barbara Wilson. We have Cornell College President Jonathan Brand. We have Michael Ash, who is the president of Southeastern Community College. And then we have Rick Torres, who's the president of the National Student Clearinghouse, which collects lots of really interesting data from across the country on college numbers. So yeah, President Wilson, why don't you just start out and share a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Vanessa, and welcome everyone. It's great to see so many people interested in higher education. And thanks to you, Vanessa, and your team for putting this together. So I'm tomorrow, I believe I'm celebrating my 3-month anniversary at the University of Iowa as the 22nd president. I'm a relative newcomer, but not a newcomer to higher ed. I was at the University of Illinois for 21 years before I crossed the Mississippi and came into Iowa. So it's been a great experience so far. I'm learning a lot, and I think I'll stop there so that I don't overwhelm people with introductory comments.
Yeah, President Brand, why don't you go ahead?
Well, thanks, Vanessa. And so Jonathan Brand, I am in my 11th year at Cornell College. Past my education's in French literature and history, and then law at the other Cornell, the younger one. And I'm thrilled to be on this too. I will say one little comment, which is when I started this job, my hair was not nearly as gray as it is now. But it's such a noble profession that we're in, that we get to serve, support students, faculty, staff, our alumni. So with that, I too will stop and say thank you. I'm thrilled to have this time with everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And then go ahead, President Ash.
Thank you, Vanessa, and welcome to all to this conference. This is a pretty exciting opportunity to share about higher education and where it's at and where we think it's headed. It's certainly some turbulent times and whatnot. I've completed my 9th year here at Southeastern Community College, which is located in West Burlington, Iowa, and we're one of those river towns. And so we're excited about all that's happening here on our campuses and all the students we have and the faculty and staff. And one of the slogans that I have instituted at this college is, "It's about the students." And so we try to make our efforts and energies and decisions related that we make related to students, make it focused on them. How does it impact them? How do they get value out of that? So without students, we're not employed, and without having those students, we're not creating teachers and doctors and steel workers or mayors or education people themselves. So it's an exciting time for us, and I'm very pleased to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And go ahead, President Torres.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you, Vanessa, for the invitation to join all of you here. My name is Rick Torres, and I'm the CEO and president of the National Student Clearinghouse, which is a nonprofit which has been serving the education community for almost 28 years. And I've been at the Clearinghouse about 13 years, and in that part of the journey, it's really been about understanding how the power of data can be used to accelerate the school's ability to have an impact on learner journeys and trajectories and where they're going. And a lot of what we've been focused on is helping schools serve their students better through this understanding. Happy to be here.
Great. Yes. Well, thanks again. And obviously we want to focus this session on the future of higher education, where we're going from here. But I did want to sort of set the stage and give people an idea of where higher education stands sort of right now. And this can obviously look at sort of what the benefit of higher education is and its relevance, and then also just any of the big picture issues that your campuses are facing right now, and things that you're looking to sort of overcome going forward.
Well, I'll chime in. Where we are right now is obviously we're in the midst of still recovering from COVID. COVID has, and I've been in education for a long, long time. And of course, it has just changed the complexion of education. It's touched every aspect of our lives, but those of us in higher education, it has greatly impacted our students, our faculty and staff. Most all of us had to go completely online back in March of 2020, and that was a major hill to climb. Unfortunately, we were able to do that, but we are now face to face. Most of our classes are face to face, and we're working hard to recover from that. Our enrollments are bounding back, which we're really very pleased to hear and see and be a part of. But we have some other outstanding issues that I'll just throw out there, and they have to do, first of all, in this, well, that's probably the future. So we have rising costs related to technology. And along with that, we have the whole issues of ransomware, hacking, phishing, and all of the things we have to do now to protect ourselves. We just are now going to multiple authentication programming just to put in another layer of protection, and all of the costs that's related to that, on top of just the cost of new programs and new apps and things we need to be doing to help our students and our faculty and staff. So the rising costs of technology, and then the rising cost of our protecting ourselves in the midst of the technology security.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And what about from the private sector there, President Brand? What are some of the big issues you guys are facing looking forward?
Well, so I think from my perspective, COVID-19 accelerated many of the challenges and opportunities, I think, that were confronting all of us in higher education. I mean, we spend a lot of time at Cornell sort of anchored in two fundamental questions: what do students want and what do students need? Now, I will say we're an undergraduate institution, so we're largely focused on 18 to 22-year-olds. It's a different set of questions, obviously, for University of Iowa with graduate programs and a student body that covers a wider range of ages, for example. So I think COVID-19 forced us to sort of confront and answer those two questions maybe a little bit more quickly than we might have otherwise. And recognizing that we're all, at least the 18 to 22-year-old population, our students are a new generation. We've got Gen Z students now, and our employees are becoming millennials, and even soon will be Gen Z. So we spend a lot of time asking ourselves, what's that institution that meets those needs and those wants, not just today, but in 10 years. And I'm often sort of referencing the Wayne Gretzky comment, don't go where the puck is, go where it's going to be, which is a call to look out into the future and think about those wants and needs. So that's at a high level where we're focused. I mean, I assume over the next 50 minutes plus, we'll go into a conversation of those wants and needs, perhaps. But again, that's for our faculty and staff and our board of trustees. Those are the two concrete questions that we're all asking ourselves on a daily basis now.
Yeah. Your comments make me sort of wonder whether, while COVID obviously was terrible in a lot of ways, whether it forced the campuses to really think, more about the issues that are supposed to be further down the road, sort of forced them to be front and center.
Right. Well, so we're one of the two national liberal arts colleges on the block system, one course at a time, one course for 3.5 weeks. And it turns out that in a pandemic, that is the optimal model, because it builds in flexibility and safety and student focus in a way that allows us on a daily basis to move things around if we have to. But I think almost as importantly, we know that Gen Z students are really interested in a personalized and they want educational experiences on their schedule, not so much on our schedule. And so being able to think about it, an academic year in 3.5-week increments allows us to think, what does the block system, what does our one course at a time methodology allow us to offer students that other institutions can't?
Yeah, interesting. And then, President Wilson, from the public side of things, what are some of the big issues?
Well, obviously, COVID has been a huge issue for us as well. And I make two comments related to that. One is that our students, to a person, are excited to be back on a residential campus. And I hear that every single day. Thank you for being open. Thank you for welcoming us back. The last 1.5 years has been tough for a lot of these students. They've been studying in Zoom environments, in basements, and in small apartments and at parents' homes for 1.5 years, and everybody has said it's not the same. It's just not the same as being on ground and being with other students, and all of the out of class experiences that a place like Iowa offers are just huge. So we are excited to be back on ground, still with the challenges that we face. The other thing is we have a huge research portfolio here at Iowa, and you can't shut labs down. You can't ignore lab animals and medical research and all the things that we're doing here during a pandemic. So we've had to really learn how to cope with very unusual circumstances and to stay in business, if you will, to keep going, to keep marching forward, and to start doing research on COVID. So, as many of you know, we were part of the clinical trials for some of the drug treatments. We've got countless ways that we've been trying to contribute to the COVID research enterprise. So it's been challenging, but I'm really proud of our people. I think we pivoted in a shorter amount of time than anyone believed was possible for an institution this size and scale. And I think now we're thinking about the future in different ways. How can we combine different kinds of learning, hybrid and on-ground learning? How do we use Zoom more effectively? How do we support conference travel and things like that for people who can't afford to travel? We're thinking about everything differently right now, but I will tell you that we aren't going to lose what a big university like this can offer, which is on-ground experiences for students and research activities that require people to be in labs and in studios and in spaces together. So,
yeah, I think you're right. When the pandemic first started, I heard kind of wondering, is this the future? Like, are we going to just lose our residential experiences because everyone will realize how convenient this is? And I also just in my reporting have heard people say, no way, that they really do want to be back in person. I guess one question I would have though, and you kind of referenced this a little bit, but like what things that changed during the pandemic because of the pandemic do you think might stay or might have a lasting impact?
Yeah, well, just in terms of the classroom, quickly, people have probably heard of the idea of flipped classrooms, but what we're learning is that some of the material that students learn can be actually put online ahead of time so that we can use classroom spaces for more interactive experiences, for labs, for more of the interactions and problem solving that students are craving and that they require to learn from each other. So I think what we're learning is that we can use technology to support learning in creative ways and maximize students' experiences. And there are some classes that students don't mind taking online, frankly. So, I think nationally, 50% of students in college now report that they're taking at least one online class. So in some cases, online makes sense, but for a lot of students, and I'll just say one thing, what we know from the research is that for students who struggle, for students who need extra support, for Pell eligible students, for first gen students, online learning is even more challenging. So we just have to remind ourselves that what might look easy for some students isn't easy for other students. I think what we're going to do is see more of a blended kind of learning experience as we go forward.
Vanessa, Could
Yeah.
I just add on to that? Because I think that is so at the heart of what COVID-19 has accelerated. And one epiphany that we had last year that relates to this, which is our students are all very comfortable technologically. They have platforms that they use in their private lives, their personal lives. And I think we've realized that the ease that they with which they approach technology, their higher education experience, their wraparound technology has to be as easy and seamless for them as it is in their private lives. And so we're thinking about technology, of course, the hybridization. We're also thinking about sort of how technology wraps around the student experience, not just in the classroom or in their classes, but in their personal lives, in their social lives, in their co-curricular lives, and having it be as attractive and easy for them as it is in their private lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead. I was going to ask you, President Torres, but go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
I just wanted to add a couple of comments based on our national scope that I think are really relevant here. I think the first thing I want to comment on is the impact that COVID had on faculty and administration. I don't think people talk about that enough. And since our organization works with the enrollment management and registrar's offices and financial aid offices very closely, the pivot to work from home was not inconsequential. That was a very, very big shift that thousands of schools had to navigate all at once. And many of them did a terrific job, but it was a lot of learning new tricks and trying to figure it out, never mind course delivery and all these other areas that had to be affected. But when you talk about the impact of COVID, I think there's a couple of things that are really important here. Number one is that it's not one size fits all. You have to look at the education sectors, the research universities, the community colleges, the mid-sized publics, the smaller publics, and the private schools. And even that conversation needs to be broken out by region, right? Because the effects were very, very different. Okay, very, very different. And frankly, there were some regions where the higher ed system was actually very healthy. I mean, Iowa happens to be one of them. You know, it's a very healthy higher education system. And there were other regions where they were in trouble, right? In many ways. And this just has exacerbated the need to rethink what the role of particular institutions are based on the sector you're in within the region that you serve. So it's actually a pretty complicated set of conversations around impact and go forward.
Those are all each excellent comments that each of you have made. I'm going to take a little different tack because it's because of COVID, issues really came to the surface in a lot of ways, and one of them, or one of the major areas, is in student mental health. And my goodness gracious, I know I've been in education a long time, and I know that there are mental health issues, and my general thought is we probably all could benefit from a therapist, spending time with a therapist. But it has, this COVID virus has just really brought all this to the very forefront. And then on top of that, to add to that problem is that there are not enough therapists. So, and then can any of our institutions really afford, how many counselors can we really afford to be able to put out there that students might need? And my experience has been, if we put out 3, then their schedules are completely packed and there's a waiting list. So this whole movement towards telehealth and telemental health is really going to be a boom here. And we are investigating that now and about ready to sign a contract with a company that will provide mental health services to students 24/7 and through the holidays and whatnot. So we will be able to do some things to help students when they're struggling at 3 a.m. And there's no staff around for them to speak with. And we're also doing some infrastructure training with our student advocates on how to detect issues and challenges and how to guide them beyond just the academic challenges that they might be experiencing. So this whole COVID experience has brought all this to the forefront, and it's a good thing in that regard because it's always been there. But I think the stress and strain of being separated from their peers or separated from the college experience, or to be forced, if you will, to take courses online when they may not wanted to do that, has brought another level of anxiety and frustration that students are having to wrestle with. So just another element of life that's a challenge for them. So.
Yeah, and I actually I was curious about that, whether you all think that mental health is something that is a right here, right now issue because of COVID, or whether it's part of your strategic plan sort of into the future, whether you think this is a permanent change, that mental health and student well-being is a real focus for each of the campuses.
Well, for us, it's something that's here and now, and we're really wrestling with it. But this is one of those things I believe is here to stay, that we have got to help students with their mental health and work through issues of life so that they can be healthier adults.
I completely agree. Last year, a year and a half ago, it's all a blur of the last 18 months. We had done a survey of students who were in our inquiry pool, which is to say that they had raised their hand and expressed interest in Cornell about what they're looking for, what they want, what they need in a college experience. The number one item was they wanted to go to a safe and stable campus. And my only observation is safe is not defined the way we might all define it.
Right.
Safe for them is physical and emotional safety. And I do not believe that this is going away anytime soon. This is a crisis that's been building that was only accelerated, I think, through COVID-19. I really think this is, and we can talk all day about the importance of educating and support and serving our students. If it's not safe, however you want to define it, it's hard, access and safety. If you can't get past those two, the educational piece, you never even get to it.
And again, on that note, it isn't how we define safe with street lights and all of that. It's does the student feel safe? And if they don't feel safe, they're not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I am wondering, kind of looking forward, in addition to mental health issues, and you kind of mentioned access there, President Brand, what are sort of the high points, the high level points in terms of your strategic plans that each of your campuses is really going to be focusing on going forward and looking into the future?
Well, maybe I can just add a few comments about mental health and wellness, Vanessa.
Yeah.
When we look nationally before the pandemic, roughly 30% of students going to college in whatever form were reporting that they had been seeking or had sought treatment for depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues. And now it's about 80%. So the pandemic definitely has shifted the concerns, but I would say if 1 out of 3 of our students are coming to us with needs related to mental health and wellness before the pandemic, we can't ignore that. And for us, it's just made it easier to talk about it and easier to emphasize it, because I don't know anybody who says the last year has been a piece of cake for me. And in fact, I've had a thriving life during the pandemic. I mean, even people who may be deniers of the importance of mental health have to acknowledge that the last year has been stressful. So we're using that as a platform to talk more about mental health and wellness. And what we're really trying to think about is, how do we teach coping strategies, resilience? How do we help students with cognitive behavioral strategies? Because, as was just pointed out, we can't possibly hire enough counselors to give everybody one-on-one special personal therapy. We can try to do as much as we can, but in the end, what we've found works even better is to try to work on prevention and education and helping students. We can't take the stress and anxiety out of life. It's going to be there, and it'll be there when they graduate. But how do we help students learn skills that will help them deal with the future and now as well? So we're really focusing on that at Iowa, and I'm really proud of our our team, because we're thinking about embedding mental health folks in every college, and we've done that in several colleges already, where students know there's a place they can go if they need to do some meditation, or if they need to talk to someone about resiliency. And that's the kind of approach we're working toward. And I want to make mental health and wellness a part of what we talk about as a regular set of skills that are connected to well-being and to academic success. And that's a huge shift away from, kind of stigmatizing mental health and wellness and only talking about it in very quiet corners. So.
Yeah, I absolutely, I agree with that. And I just want to make a quick note that I sometimes the way that I source my stories is to put out a call on social media for people to email me in one, and I don't often, get a lot of, I don't get a lot of feedback sometimes, but when I put out a call recently for students wanting to share about their mental health and I wasn't expecting anything, and I just got a barrage of people reaching out by email to share their story. And so it really, it was impactful for me as a reporter to hear that.
And maybe to tag on to what Rick said before, let's not forget about staff and faculty. We spend so much time thinking about student well-being, but we know our faculty and staff have had a tough year and a half too, especially people working in healthcare, in our hospital, in our clinics, but just everybody. It's been a challenging time. And so we're thinking about these issues more broadly. It's not just students, it's our staff and faculty as well.
Yeah, and another big issue that a lot of people are talking about that everybody is looking at into the future is the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, that topic. I wonder, just to lay the groundwork for that, President Torres, can you talk at all about there are obviously a lot happening in terms of shifting demographics and why that may be, something that's becoming more relevant for all campuses?
Well, I can tell you that the data that we have it really has shown that COVID had a pretty big disparate impact on students of color and also socioeconomic related matters. It was profound. I think part of what's happening out here is that students are questioning value, right? And I think that while this is something that has been written about and talked about, that higher education provides a ton of value, right? Yet this is the question that pops up, right? Which then really puts the schools in a position to have to double down. But then the other piece of this is, how do we address the access related issues and the persistence, which means that, can a student who starts persist from one year to the next to getting to a completion? And how well suited is the current higher education environment to allow for that to happen, right, with the appropriate supports? And this is something that's under clear analysis right now, because frankly, that's where there's opportunity, right? I can tell you that a lot of the statistics that you see, that I've seen, that talk about the shift in demographics and looking at declines in enrollments into the future, all have one thing in common that I've seen, is that most of them assume no change in the access rates from where they are today for the different classes of students out there. Mm-hmm. So it's the all things being equal conversation. And that's the problem. I mean, because there is an opportunity, and I'll end with this one, comment. There's a lot of evidenced work that is going on between school districts and community colleges and four-year schools, where these schools are reaching into the school districts, and not just for the advanced students with dual enrollment and having them enroll in courses, but they're helping to remediate learners that are sophomores and juniors and seniors, so that by the time they graduate from high school, they actually can enroll in college. And some of the early returns on that are that it's working, that all of a sudden you are seeing a difference in the access rates and persistence rates of some of these lower income and underserved students by simply extending that outreach into the school districts and working with the districts in helping prepare students.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, jumping off of that, I'd love to hear what each of your campuses are doing in terms of access, whether it is a top priority looking forward and what steps you're taking to increase it.
Well, Vanessa, I can jump in and say this has for us been, again, this has been, if our students can't afford to come to Cornell, then it doesn't really matter how great we are as an institution. So over the last year, starting with last year, had launched this Iowa Promise Scholarship, where we said to any student, you will have a financial aid scholarship of $30,000, so that we can ensure that when you graduate, it's akin to being at a public institution, for your institution. And this year we extended that to all adjacent states. We call it the Freeway Scholarship. So Wisconsin and Illinois and Missouri and Nebraska and Minnesota. And then just launched this debt reduction pledge where we will pay off a student's federal loan up to $12,000, again, because if our students can't afford to be at Cornell for 4 years and graduate, that's the other piece of this. We have to encourage retention and graduation. Then it doesn't matter how great we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about at the community college level, President Ash? What is happening in terms of trying to increase access there?
Well, first of all, we have developed a DEI council, and it has all levels of representation, including students. And so we have a very robust activity schedule and programming through that council. Secondly, we are being very pronounced in who we're recruiting for faculty and staff. And I say it this way, we are not looking for people who look like me. We're looking for people who look like who we're trying to get in. And we have seen our diversity rates and diversity percentages of our students grow from when I got here was probably around 5%, which was pretty much reflecting the state, and we're up around 25% now. And so, and some of that is athletics. We get kids from all over the country and all over the world, for that matter. So we have quite a diversity, but we've also expanded diversity to be individuals who might be on our faculty and staff, who might have some diversity and ethnicity, but also their educational experiences. So in other words, and no offense, President Wilson, but we're not looking for everybody who graduated from University of Iowa to be on staff here. We're looking for diversity of education. So we have people from Alabama and from North Carolina and Utah, and they come from all over the country to be members of our staff. In fact, we just recently hired someone from Italy to be in our biological sciences program. So we have expanded that definition, but we also have worked hard to include. And we take very strong measures as it relates to helping our students understand the importance and value. We recently, back in September, we held our Black Hawk Bash, is what we call it, big picnic and student clubs and all that. But I had a faculty member stop me, and she said, as she looked over the group of individuals out in our courtyard, this campus has become very diverse. And I was like getting ready to, have to duke it out with her when she said, and that's a good thing. That is a very good thing. So even our faculty and staff are coming to that realization that this is really important, that diversity and equity and inclusion are extremely important. And they're not just nice words that we throw around. There are things we're trying to practice. And at a state level, we have collectively, the community colleges have gone together, and we have a state director now for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so he's helping to coordinate all the activities that are happening on each of the campuses around the state.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of access, I'm interested in how some of these collaborations are playing into that, because I know obviously, President Ash, you have a somewhat unique partnership now, with private colleges, and are some of those partnership agreements helping with that to get students from one to another, or 4-year degrees and associate degrees?
Well, you're referring to our alliance with Iowa Wesleyan, and
Yes.
and they are a private institution located in Mount Pleasant, which is within our region of service. And it took quite a while to get that agreement put together and put in place. It is a wonderful agreement, and it is not to take away from any other private school or our state schools, but they just are down the road from us. And so working together, we're bringing our international students together. We are sharing student activities, student events. We are some of our athletic students finish with us, and then they transfer. Some not all, but some transfer to Wesleyan to continue their competition. So yes, it has been quite an experience, and we're just getting started with it. So the future is looking really, really bright, and we're really excited about it. And this alliance has a board of its own, and it oversees the operations and the efforts that we're doing to make sure we stay on track with our agreement. So we're being very pronounced about it, and very excited about the possibilities that are going on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And President Wilson, I'm interested in what you think about access, because obviously the Board of Regents institutions are pretty accessible in terms, and pretty transparent about it with the RAI. And I know there are always concerns about tuition rates, but when you compare to your peers, you're relatively low. So what are your thoughts about that going forward? Do you feel like there need to be changes on that front?
Thanks for pointing that out, Vanessa. I appreciate it. Yeah, the tuition, in-state tuition for the University of Iowa is the second lowest in the Big Ten. I don't think any tuition is a bargain, but relative to our peer groups, we are very, very, very affordable. Roughly $9,000 in-state tuition, and I'll just compare over the river to Illinois, it's over 16,000. So not to pick on Illinois, but I know it well, having been there quite a long time. So we are committed to keeping costs down. That's been I think a huge effort among the regent universities. Nevertheless, if the state can't continue to support us, or decides to change our budgeting model, we're going to have to, look at tuition over the years. We're committed to keeping it low, and even when we increase it, we try to increase it only to the inflationary level, so that we can pay our faculty and staff and make sure we can do all the things we need to do. But our tuition is very reasonable. And on the diversity front, just to point out a few facts that I think are important about Iowa. We welcomed, almost 5,000 new students, undergraduate students this fall. 1 out of 5 is first in family to go to college. So we feel very proud about that. And roughly 20% are from underrepresented racial and ethnic minority groups. So we have a very strong commitment to diversity, and we will continue that. But we look at diversity across lots of different factors. It's not just race and ethnicity. It's urban versus rural, it's international diversity, it's sexual orientation diversity, it's veterans, it's students with disabilities. We've got a big melting pot of diversity here, and we're proud of it, but it brings with it lots of challenges to make sure that we emphasize inclusion, not just diversity, but inclusion. And then last, but I just want to emphasize that, it's great to bring students in, but you got to get them graduated. And, our first year retention rate is 87%. That means we don't lose very many students, but we have a goal to get it over 90%. If we're going to bring you here, we want to look at every family member and parent and young person and say, you're going to make it here, and we're going to graduate you. We're going to put support systems around you, take you for wherever you are, and make sure you leave here with an undergraduate degree. So we are very focused on that, and we're putting lots of resources into retention and graduation right now.
Yeah, I'm curious about that graduation, actually, because I'm wondering, what if you guys wouldn't mind kind of sharing some real details around what those supports are. What have you found that is helpful and works? in getting
Yeah.
students to graduate?
Well, we've identified some courses that are roadblocks for students, and they happen to be in some of our STEM fields, math and science. So we're revising how we provide instruction in those courses, how we scale up support around certain chemistry and math classes, for example. We know that we lose students when they don't feel like they belong. And so we are trying really hard to connect students early on. We survey students. We have a required survey within the first 6 weeks to try to understand whether students are feeling lonely. Everybody's feeling lonely when they first come here, but we know where through our data analytics, we know where you might be on the continuum. And if you're at risk, then we're going to make sure you're getting connected early on to advisors. So I'm very impressed with the amount of data that we're collecting on our students early on. We know who's visiting the health clinics and who's going and getting tutoring and who's not going to class. And believe it or not, 30,000 students and 20,000 undergrads, we are laser focused on providing support. And it's one of the things we can do as a relatively small Big Ten university. We can do it much better than a place like Ohio State or something like that. So those are just some examples. I can give you lots more if you want to have a one-on-one sometime, but it's pretty impressive.
Well, and if I could, I'll add one point. The state of Iowa does a terrific job versus the national landscape in keeping kids in school. So again, this is another example of the higher education system, both public and private, doing a very good job. The last data that we had was looking at the class through I think it was the spring of 2020, but the class was a 79.7% retention rate, which was 6th in the country. Overall, this includes all sectors from students from the class of 2019. All right, so how many of them were still engaged? That is a terrific number, right? You start thinking about that. And so when you start thinking about how you work with the state, you got to start with what's working. And then how do you build off of that, right? And this is a great, set of data to help really drive home what is working, and then to build off of those those benefits.
Yeah, and I want to just before we move on, I forgot to mention to folks at the beginning of this, at the outset, that if you have questions, you can go ahead and shoot those into the Whova app, and those will come to me, and then I can pose them to the presidents here. So wanted to mention that as well. But President Brand, I wanted to ask you, I reported recently on the sort of the loan reduction or the debt payback. There were lots of pieces tied into that, but was part of that retention and time to graduation in terms of helping and encouraging that?
Absolutely. And part of it is, again, if a student comes to any institution and they stay a year or two, and then they leave and don't continue with their education anywhere, it's a net loss for society, for all of us. So attracting students in terms of ensuring access, it really has to be conjoined with some sort of an effort, a serious effort, and that's a multi-pronged effort, as you're hearing from our colleagues, to ensure that students stay through 4 years, which is our graduation rate. 98% of our students graduate in 4 years. It's ensuring that they get to the finish line. And so the way the debt reduction program is set up is to avail it for a student to avail themselves of the program, they need to graduate. So absolutely, it was to give them something else out there to encourage them to keep going. Just another incentive.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And so I do want to get to the point, as this hour is really flying by. I want to get to the discussion about funding, because I know Iowa obviously is not unique in the crisscross of where it's getting its revenue. And I guess I'm just wondering, I know that obviously the University of Iowa just joined, did a public-private partnership that's generating revenue. But I'm wondering, how are the campuses thinking uniquely about this issue going forward into the future?
Well, I think for Southeastern, we are very focused on public-private partnerships, and I've got 3 or 4 that are working now. Not the least of which is the Iowa Wesleyan connection. And there are some finances involved with that, but it is very important from my standpoint, and I try to really help the legislators understand that I don't come there just with my hand out saying, you guys owe us this, you got to do this. I certainly need their support, but I want them to see that we're working hard trying to raise funds as well. And so I'm looking for ways that on our end that we can save dollars, which then allow those dollars to be freed up and funneled in a different direction, as well as building relationships with other partners. Right now, we're working on a big partnership possibility with an area group that wants to invest multi-million dollars into the college, through the college into the community. And so there's lots of conversations, lots of opportunities there. And so we're just trying to find the right way to do that and to make that happen. And so those are a few examples of what we're trying to do here, saving money. And we're at a big solar project here and anticipate saving a sizable amount of money for utilization of utilities and whatnot that can be used in another fashion. And then these other partnerships that that we're able to connect with and to develop that will either save us money or will draw in new revenue.
Yeah, that's a great point, that it's not always about generating new revenue, but perhaps, producing some savings or just getting an institute out of a business it's not an expert in. Could you talk just a little bit about that, President Wilson, and what the University of Iowa has done in terms of?
Yeah, well, you're probably referencing the big P3 project we have on utilities, which has been a really important partnership and phenomenal opportunity for us to increase some revenue each year to really spur innovation and to pilot different programs. We've used a lot of the funding from that to figure out what's working for student retention and graduation, for example. But it's not going to ever replace the kind of recurring dollars that we need to run an institution of this size and scale. So, for me, it's helping our legislators and our public appreciate the value of higher education in the state. And it's not just for individuals, although we know that individuals who pursue higher ed, they compared to those who don't, they're healthier, they're more likely to volunteer in their communities, they're more likely to vote, they're more likely to not rely on the state for basic needs, and they're more likely to pay taxes. So, on an individual level, the state should be very interested and is interested in encouraging and enhancing completion of higher ed for individuals. But, we're also helping the economies of every place that we're in, and all of our institutions are doing that. I mean, we're a magnet for talent, and that talent invests in the communities. We're also helping businesses, for example. I mean, I just learned yesterday that our Tippie College of Business is working with over 700 small and medium-sized businesses across the state on various consulting and executive ed programs to help those businesses. That's the kind of thing I need to be talking about all the time, because we're not just sucking resources out of the state. We're actually improving the state's economic development on so many levels. And of course, healthcare is another huge area where, we produce 75% of the dentists who are practicing in the state of Iowa. And I think every community wants good dental care. So, I think that we've lost the public narrative a bit about the role of higher ed in the states. And that's part of my job, I believe, is to get out and talk to people about this. These are great institutions, and we can't afford to let them fail. We have to support the kind of transformational impact that we're having locally and statewide.
Yeah, and this kind of plays in exactly to maybe what the university is doing there with its P3 revenue. But we did get a question from the audience that asks each of you to ask how each of you encourages and sustains innovative thinking and problem solving at your universities. So yeah, maybe can you jump around and kind of share a little bit about that?
Well, I'll jump in real quickly to say that we're teaching innovation across the curriculum. We have a big entrepreneurial center called the Papa John Center for Entrepreneurship that draws students in from all of our colleges across the campus. And so, we know students are hungry. They want to be innovative. They want to think about problem solving. And what we're trying to do is say, come to Iowa and you can try out ideas. We can support you with mentoring, and we can connect you to other students from other disciplines, because I believe that there is no problem today that's going to be solved just by engineers or just by scientists. COVID is a great example. We have the treatments and the medicine, but we're struggling on the social and the cultural and the economic impact of this pandemic. So it has to be multidisciplinary problem solving. And I think that all of our institutions are working on bringing students to the fore, and they want to do this. Our students are creative. So it's a big part of what we're doing here at Iowa.
Yeah. And I know President Brand, like at Cornell as well, you guys, I mean, is it a thing where you ask faculty and students to bring sort of these novel ideas, these innovations? I know you guys tapped students even in your COVID response, and faculty as well, got them all involved. I mean, what is the culture there around innovation?
Well, on a campus of our size, we like to think of the whole campus as a laboratory, not just what happens in the classroom. So our students, so no surprise, like most schools, we have a COVID response team. Well, we have a student on the COVID response team who's very active and vocal. So again, for us, it is, to your point, creating a culture where our students don't feel as if decisions are being handed down, but that they're actually invested and involved in them. And that's very much within the culture of the school. I also think, again, it goes a little bit to the teaching and learning model and the evolution that we've been touching on this afternoon a little bit, which is our students, they don't come in wanting to be passive learners. They want to roll up their sleeves at all of our schools, and they want to be engaged and involved. They don't want information just thrown at them. They want to be involved in curating their educational experience and coming up with solutions, with potential solutions. And they want to do it in teams. They don't even want to do it alone, which to my way of thinking even makes innovation. I mean, it's fun when somebody comes up with a great idea, innovates alone, but it's so much more exciting when they do it in groups together. And that's at the core of the liberal arts, right? A broad and deep experience that leads people to be hungry, humble, smart, inquisitive, and to have the skills to satisfy their curiosity. So we try to really focus on the building blocks and to give them the spaces, the facilities, the faculty, and the staff where they can ask those questions, and then they can find answers to them, and then explain them actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Our time is short here, but I wanted to ask whether you all think there needs to be any sort of policy changes, higher ed related policy changes in the future. Specifically, I'm thinking about things like this push for sort of free community college. I don't know, President Ash, if you have thoughts on that, or whether that's a way of the future or not.
Well, Iowa has somewhat of a free community college. They call it last dollar scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for high demand jobs, and then all aid that comes to the student goes on first, then it's the last dollar scholarship. So that's right now, that's Iowa's free community college. Personally, I would rather see increases in the Pell opportunities for students, and that's going to target more of those lower end income level families and allow students that may have some disadvantages already to be able to take advantage of a college education versus making it free for everybody. I don't quite understand yet the formula on that's coming out of the Biden administration for this. I honestly don't think it will work in that setting. And whether it should, I guess I don't even believe that either, because I think people need to learn how to work for something. I think they'll have a better appreciation for what they've earned. So I'm not a big proponent of free anything for that matter, free education or free community college, which sounds probably a little bit weird to some people because, well, you're a community college. Well, I don't necessarily believe that, because I think students should earn it. The other thing along that line is that helping students to grow and develop and mature is part of the experience too. And if it's just handed to them, then I think they lose the value of the important, or they just lose the value of it, and the importance that they have to apply themselves to learning and to the process. And then that Pell, by increasing the Pell dollars, I think that gives opportunity for, again, for those who are disadvantaged to have a better opportunity to attend whatever institution that they might choose to attend. And I'm more favorable to that idea than to free community college. But so policy wise, I think the Pell would be something that needs some attention and needs some looking at as far as reworking the formula and the different levels that a student can get to. So, and then beyond that, with the Pell, opening it up larger to students who may only want a certificate or a diploma. They may not be interested in going to school for 2 years or 4 years or whatever. But if they have a certificate and they get that paid for or helped pay for through the Pell, then we'll have more people available for the workforce. And the way the workforce is right now, there's jobs galore and the pay is incredible. I just had someone stop in here just before this event that told me that one of their still in school mechanics in training, this was offered $48 an hour to work on one of the express company's trucks and work on their vehicles. $48 an hour. That's a $90,000 job, and the kid hadn't even finished college yet or finished his degree. And so we're interested to see if he'll take that position. But it's a skill, and there's such a need right now for skilled labor and being able to provide students with that opportunity, I think would be great. And then being able to reach down a little bit further, it can help with that inclusion piece by making it opportunistic for students that want to come out of poverty or need to come out of poverty to be able to take those next steps. So.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to throw out one last question here for you guys around the idea of policy. Given what President Torres told us earlier about the changing demographics, what do you all think about these ideas of requiring high school students to fill out the FAFSA, the free federal aid student application, and just getting them to sort of start thinking about the fact that they could go to college?
Yeah, Vanessa, I can speak to that because when I was in Illinois, the governor signed that legislation, and now every high school is required to do that. And I think it is a great, and we saw student numbers go radically up in terms of filling out the FAFSA. So I think it's a great idea. A lot of students don't realize what kind of aid they qualify for. They're a little overwhelmed with the application process, especially if they're first in family to go to college. So the more we can encourage people to explore what their options are and do it in a safe environment with lots of support, I'd say thumbs up. The other thing I would mention, just in terms of state policy, I would love to see the state think about putting funding into workforce needs. So if we're shortage of teachers, let's have some scholarship funding for students who want to teach in K through 12 in the state of Iowa. Let's fund some nursing degrees if we have a shortage of nursing, assuming you'll practice in the state of Iowa. So I'm very much interested in thinking with our legislators about ways to support students in particular workforce need areas.
Yeah, wow. Well, those are obviously such really great comments, and all of your comments were really relevant and I think really interesting. So I just want to thank you all again for joining us, for your insights, for everybody for listening in. And yeah, you can continue to follow the conference online, as you know. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
colleagues.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.